Welcome to the Old Souls and Seekers podcast, brought to you by Satori Prime. If you're anything like us, you've been around and around the personal development and mindset block quite a few times. You've read the books, watched the videos, attended the seminars, and even worked with a coach or two, and yet you still find yourself searching for more. You may even feel stuck or that you should be farther along than where you are right now. And after doing over a decade of mindset work, we've come to this realization. Mindset work is like a small hit of dopamine that distracts you from your true work. You get these little hits of feeling better, only to be met with the same underlying conditions and patterns over and over again. Now, mindset was an important part of your evolution as well as ours, but it hits a plateau, and now you find yourself ready for that deeper layer of growth and expansion. If you're listening to this podcast, then you're ready to get off that Ferris wheel. This podcast is only for those that are ready to dive deep and do the real inner healing work. For those that are ready to move past more information into actual experiences. If you're looking for more understanding, then you've come to the wrong place. This is a home for old souls ready to fully embrace and remember who they truly are. Ready to make a profound difference in their lives and in the lives of others. So welcome home, dear one. We're excited to be part of your journey. All right, everyone. Welcome back to this very special, episode of Old Souls and Seekers. If you happen to see the video of this, you can probably see that there's a guy here usually. And so when guy's here, usually means we have a pretty incredible interviewer or interviewee. Both of us are a bit giddy with excitement to share this incredible being with you. He has made a profound difference in our lives. And also everyone that pretty much is a client of ours, their lives as well, because we've all reread a million times his book over and over and over called The 5 Personality Patterns. So we are elated to be able to be here speaking to the man himself who wrote it, Stephen Kessler. So first of all, welcome to the show, Stephen.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Such a pleasure.
Yeah. I told Stephen when we first met, we do a pre-interview, and I was like, Stephen, you just got to give me like 30 seconds to be like complete fanboy and just freak out that I'm watching you on the screen. Really, truly, like this man has created it's not even a methodology, a framework, map for humans to find themselves and how they operate in the world and therefore operate with others to such a detailed extent that literally every single person that reads their character style, and we'll talk about that here, always comes back to Guy and I's like, are you kidding me? Like, how does this person know my deepest thoughts and know exactly what's happening in my life and how it's to that level. It's a little bit creepy and eerie. So, Stephen, why don't you just start by giving people a little bit of your background and how even this like book and you came to be, and then we'll jump into the other stuff after.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I refer to it as a map of personality. And I phrase it that way because I want to distinguish between personality and essence. Mm. Your essence, your true self is who you really are. And your personality is a layer on top of that, a part of your ego structure, probably most of your ego structure. And that this is a map of that personality layer, that ego structure layer, which is really made up of, almost entirely made up of defense strategies, ways to try to feel safer. And I've found it very useful to study people that way. I actually, before I heard about the character structure map of personality, and this comes out of character structure. This is basically what I have done is gathered and updated teaching from almost 100 years of character structure, starting from Wilhelm Reich. I've lost my thought.
And that happens.
Where did I start with that?
You're talking about the defendant self and how this is part of the ego structure.
And before I started with this, I was a huge Enneagram fan.
Mm.
I literally studied the Enneagram for 20 years. Started out with studying with Helen Palmer in her classes with live exemplars, and I think studying from live exemplars is a great way to do that.
Sure.
And then I was in her first teacher training, and then I was in the Diamond Heart School, the Ridwan Meditation School for 16 years, and they use the Enneagram in their training. And so I got really deep into it. And then I began studying here in Berkeley in a class which is focused on working with energy, the flow of life energy through the body, containing energy, focusing energy, using it to manifest things in the world. And in that class, I was introduced to the character structure map of personality. Because when a person gets overwhelmed, they go into one of these 5 defense strategies, one of these 5 ways of trying to feel safer. And if you understand this map of personality, this way of understanding what people do in overwhelm, it's easy to notice when you've gone into overwhelm and that you've gone into overwhelm and what to do to get out of it.
Yeah.
And come back to presence, which is the point. So stepping back to your larger question about like, how did I get here in the first place?
Yeah.
My life has been a kind of a strange succession of focuses. When I was a kid in elementary school and high school, I had 2 things I was interested in. The main thing was science, especially physics.
Mm.
And then the last few years in high school, I got interested also in the drama class and the theater, the actually acting in plays. And I remember when I was a freshman in high school, going to the school play like 3 nights in a row, which is all they did it. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching this and I'm thinking, these people are having emotions that I don't have.
Oh, wow.
Why don't I have those? This is not good.
Yes.
And I was, pretty wound up, pretty tight to try to contain the various fears and traumas of my childhood. And that realization was the beginning of the unwinding process.
Hmm.
So I then started, I took the drama class, so I got to meet the drama teacher, and that gave me the courage to actually audition for the school plays. And then I did a lot of roles in school plays and began opening up a little bit more. And then it was time to go to college. And my parents said, hey, how about getting a real job like science?
This acting stuff is not going to pay the bills.
And I thought that was probably a pretty good idea. It's like, they don't pay actors pretty well unless you're famous.
Yeah.
So one of the schools I applied to was MIT, and I got in there.
Oh, wow.
I was there as a freshman studying physics. And while I was at MIT, I'm looking around at my fellow students here, and I'm thinking, man, I am pretty messed up from my childhood, but these people are worse.
Yeah.
It's not getting better if I stay here.
Oh, my God.
This is not where the healing will take place.
Wow.
So I, halfway through the year, I went over to the acting school at Boston University.
Wow.
And I auditioned to get in there. And weirdly enough, that was even harder to get into than MIT. They only have 75 students a year. Alfre Woodard was the standout from my class. He was the one who had talent and the one other people have heard from, and the rest of us faded into the background. But in 4 years of acting school, because I did get in there and I did go through their program, they taught me a lot about just relaxing your body, paying attention to your body, come back into your body. What if you actually start from your body? And that was really helpful. And then I sort of didn't know what to do with myself. I was in a rep company for 4 years doing roles in that company. And then that was when I went into the I don't know what to do next thing, but decided, okay, I like the emotional contact of theater, but I'm not really good at it. I'm never going to get paid a lot for being an actor. What else can I do? And I realized that I had gone to some summertime kind of week-long retreats where there had been, dozens of different teachers teaching all kinds of healing techniques. Okay. And I had really loved this stuff. And every day at lunchtime in the cafeteria, I'd sit down with a new group of people I've never met, and then the time would gradually end, and most people would leave, and it would be me and one other person sitting across the table, and that person is saying to me, I don't know why I'm telling you this. I've never said this to anyone before in my life. And after a week of that, I thought, I could get paid for this.
That's a good insight.
So I went to graduate school in transpersonal psychotherapy out here at John F. Kennedy University in California, and got an education, got licensed, and became a psychotherapist. And it was the combination of acting school and psychotherapy, which is a new show every hour, but you get paid. And the Enneagram and energy class and learning character structure that I finally, I could say that I decided to write this book, but it might be more accurate to say that whatever non-physical beings in the lineage of this material wanted this stuff to come into physical form, right. They sort of maneuvered me into doing this, because I didn't know for some years that I was writing a book on this. I was just taking very detailed notes in class and reading the very few other books in the field that described character structure. And gradually realizing, there is no good book on this for the general public.
Right.
Yeah.
It was kind of lost in the backwaters of psychotherapy and energy healing for many years. So that's my very long answer to your question about how the hell did I get here?
Before we jump into the character styles, this work, you kept saying the word, safety. So it's like so I would love, because obviously we define it a certain way, but I would love to hear from you, how do you define safety?
This is a great question. In my energy class, which I've been in now for 18, 19 years, way back, there was a point we were studying this and I realized we're talking about safety and I can't find in my body an actual personal experience of safety.
Yep.
Right.
Which was kind of a fascinating discovery. And so I asked about it and we set up a sort of psychodrama thing for me. And I got the feeling of being held in an energetic container by good mother and good father. Mm-hmm. I had never felt that before. Mm-hmm. So I think it's probably realistic to suppose that many people in the world, maybe most people, don't actually have a felt sense of safety. We all know we want it, but most of us have spent so much of our lives, traumatized, and the trauma has gotten so stuck in our energy bodies that we don't actually know it. So how would I define it? Best definition would be that your system, in medicine, we would call it your nervous system. I would call it your energy system, calms down. Down regulation is the term in psychology.
Yeah.
But if you have a little baby, there's that moment when they fall asleep like on your shoulder and they're just totally limp. It's just like, no stiffness in the body, no holding back, right? That kind of basic physical trust in the body.
That's the definition. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
It's the undefended self, right? I love your story, and I love hearing all of it because I hear so many parallels in our own. In fact, I went to school down the road from you at Northeastern.
Oh, so, okay. Okay.
Yeah. And so many of the parallels about the realizations of a lack of feeling in the body. I remember hugging someone at Landmark Education. That was kind of what popped us open.
Oh, okay.
And I was hugging somebody, and I had this profound feeling of being cold. Like I thought of my mother, and I thought, when's the last time Mom said I love you? But not that we said it to each other, but that I received it and felt it.
There you go.
And it was this sudden feeling of feeling so icy cold and robotic that it shocked me. It like scared me that I hadn't felt that in a very long time, because I had no recollection of a time where that was an authentic feeling in my body. And for me, I remember that was the first time I went from I'm trying to understand what's happening to I'm no longer feeling, and this lack of feeling is creating fear in my body. It took us quite a long time to come to the conversation of safety. I think your average person, like you said, I believe exactly what you believe. 99.999% of the public does not know what well-being feels like, does not know what safety feels like, does not know how to downregulate their nervous system. And it's funny because if you make the parallels between a child and a mother, like a little baby and a mother, like you just did, or a father, the child has an undeveloped nervous system, right? Or an energetic body, right? I would use those interchangeably as well. And so the child is really just trying to template the parents when it's an upset or overwhelm or stress to learn how to kind of recalibrate or bring the nervous system back to, a safe state or relaxed state. But since we have adults for, I don't know, thousands of years now, certainly many generations out, that have not been taught how to downregulate their own nervous systems, we are teaching tightness, we're teaching defense to generation after generation. And so it seems like we're slowly coming to this understanding of, okay, well, how do we do that? And we actually need people like Stephen and other people who've had teachers that have helped them kind of learn how to navigate their energetic bodies to start templating this for other people, because just like a child needs a templating, adults actually need that templating too.
Yeah. And when a person gets scared, there are only a few things they can do to feel less scared. They can tighten their body, constrict their breathing, and try not to feel it so much. I mean, that's the basic thing. You can tighten your musculature, to try to numb yourself and feel it less, or you can take your consciousness away from your body. Right. So you don't feel it so much. And basically that's about it. And the little baby who goes so limp when they go to sleep, they haven't yet developed very much ego structure. And I would propose that most of what we call ego structure is actually tension in the psyche and in the body. And it's a tension designed to try to hold at bay some of the fear and terror of the early traumas. So if we have, whole populations and civilizations in which nearly everybody is stuck permanently in a traumatized state, then everybody thinks, well, that's just the way it is. And, often they're stuck in the roles of, you're either the person who's being mean to and dominating the other one, or you're stuck in the victim role, and those are your two choices. Get over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people play them out because that's
absolutely
kind of all they know. On this topic of safety, it's really interesting. Guy and I, for a long time, were like, if we actually told people what we do and the training modules, what we would love to name our course is Find Safety. Right? Like, because ultimately, I feel like that's what we do. And this kind of a curiosity from you, because I know you also work with clients, which is, I don't even know that people could ever voice that what they're wanting or needing is safety. I think at a very animal level, I think the nervous system wants to downregulate. But if you ask anyone coming off the street, hey, do you want safety? They're like, the hell are you talking about? So I guess my question / curiosity is, as you're working with people, how do people find their way into this level of work with you where all of a sudden safety becomes like, oh, wow, this is what I'm actually seeking. So that you kind of like pull them out of that human ego place.
Yeah, the problem is that we're not able to think about things until we have names for them.
Right.
When we don't have names, when no one has named it to us, it's only a vague, weird sort of feeling in the body, and we can't think about it very clearly. And then, of course, when we add a name, that constricts the experience, and now we're dealing just with the name frequently instead of the whole experience. But it's been my experience that people usually come into some kind of inner work, whether it's psychotherapy or coaching or you guys started with Landmark, it sounds like.
Yep.
I actually started with LifeSpring back in, I think, 78. And I found it very useful. It was it was an entry-level training. Yep. It was about take responsibility for yourself. And what about if you stop playing the victim and actually take charge of your life? But it was a useful step for me.
Absolutely.
It's been my experience, people come into inner work simply because they have a problem in their life that they want a solution to. My boss yells at me and I cower and I don't like that. What can I do?
Right.
Or, my spouse is mean to me, or nobody wants to be my spouse, or, some very practical level. And then we have to drop down through layer after layer. Because as you said, most people don't have a word and therefore don't even have a concept for safety.
Sure.
And don't realize that they don't have any felt sense in the body. Although we have often had little glimpses, those moments that people talk about as wonderful times, that time when my new sweetheart and I were standing on the hilltop at sunset, looking out across the ocean at the beauty of nature and feeling so in love, right? Held in an energy field of love, and with our systems settled down momentarily.
Yeah.
Until someone left the top off the toothpaste tube.
Yeah. It doesn't take much. One broken light bulb.
That's
really,
it.
Really, it's amazing,
Yeah.
What's the argument about which way the toilet paper roll should go?
That's it.
Yeah.
You will hang on to them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, and I don't mean to belabor this, but curious to hear your take. It's a two-part question. One, do you find that as people delve into this work, both from the map and the character style, also into the energetics, that aspects of themselves that have been dormant, for example, someone who practices, has a lever pattern tendency, and for those that don't know, like a lever pattern would be that when you're overwhelmed or overcharged or don't feel safe, your awareness will literally like shoot up because it's just not safe in the body. So as these people are healing these aspects, right, like there's a landing in the body, an embodiment that happens. And what we've seen is, and I'm just curious if you've noticed this too, that as they embody it, almost like these other character styles that maybe were dormant, so say more like the aggressive pattern, right? Like all of a sudden they gain access to these other qualities and they start to experience things like maybe anger or rage that they have never allowed themselves to experience. And it can be a little jarring, if you will. It's almost like something's coming out of you that you've just never felt before, because obviously you haven't allowed it. It hasn't been safe. So do you find that to be true, that as you're kind of healing, like these different aspects begin to kind of dance through you?
I would certainly say yes. I find that people find that doors open in their body and in their psyche to parts of themselves that they had disowned. Disowned parts tend to come back. Mm-hmm. But I would also say that does not mean that they are doing a different pattern. I find that a lot of people confuse being caught in a pattern, that is using it as a safety strategy, with displaying the gifts and talents of that pattern. The fact that a person gets angry does not mean that they are doing the aggressive pattern. It's just that anger is one of the main defense mechanisms of people caught in the aggressive pattern. But anybody in any pattern or in no pattern, a person who's quite present in the moment, can feel anger, especially if that's exactly what's needed in this moment to protect yourself. So I found it more useful to talk about the patterns as verbs instead of as nouns. Most people will change it into a noun. They'll say, I'm a lever, I'm an endurer. And I will gently try to coax them into saying, I get caught in the leaving pattern. Right. I get caught in the enduring pattern. I get caught in the rigid pattern. Or my body, I will refer to someone as a rigid patterned person, meaning the body has been conditioned into that pattern. But it means this is a safety strategy the person goes into as they get distressed. So the way to tell which patterns you or somebody else goes into is to watch what you do as you become distressed, as you shift from calm, happy, safe, peaceful, no problem, to a little upset, a little annoyed, a little frustrated, a little, to a little more, a little more, a little more, a little more. Probably what I find most people find is they go into one pattern first, which I like to call their primary pattern, their first pattern. And then when the distress goes past a certain threshold, they will switch into their backup pattern or their secondary pattern. And for most people, it's two patterns. I haven't known anyone who does only one.
Right.
Although for some people, there is one pattern that is so dominant that you sort of never see them in their other pattern, whether it comes first in the first half second before they go to the second one, or it comes later, but who knows when. There are certainly people who are so deeply caught in a particular pattern that you sort of never see them doing anything else.
Yeah. And I think it's important for people to know that these patterns are developed at the like 0 to 7, 0 to 8
early on.
ages. And the book is written kind of as and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like a blueprint kind of in the timeline in which they are developed, right? So like a lever pattern is usually that like 0 to 6 months age group. And so like it's interesting because we describe trauma as like these really big things that happen, but it could be like really, really subtle things that happen to the child, or the perception of the child, something it got, something it didn't get, a misattunement. It's not necessarily like an event occurred, you know, but it was like some kind of repetitious. And the reason I bring that here is because I think oftentimes people look at themselves and think, oh, there's something wrong with me, right? But when you start realizing what Stephen's pointing at is that these are defensive strategies, and these parts of you are attempting to bring you back to safety. And most people, when they do like therapy or something like that, at least in my experience, their strategy has been to disown these parts and try to get rid of them.
Right.
Yep. And it's almost like you're in a relationship that you're disowning somebody, and so this part of you, instead of being like, okay, I'll just go, like hunkers down and like digs its heels in and is like, I'm gonna come even at you even stronger with this. And the healing in our experience has been more of a relaxing into accepting, even honoring these parts for how hard they work on your behalf, how long they've been here, that they don't ask for anything in return, and really starting to see like, oh my God, this part of me is trying so hard to create safety for me. And it's like, okay, I see you, I love you. And then actually something really special can happen, because we're all trying to become whole again, right? But you can't become whole by disowning a part of yourself and saying, I will be whole, but as long as this part remains in the back closet somewhere where no one can see it, it's actually quite the opposite. You want to build a very intimate relationship with these parts. And as you start accepting them and accepting the experiences that they bring through and everything else, there really seems to turn, like kind of flick the switch on here and have these parts of you relax also. And I think something else, and something else I think we find is that when they relax, it's almost like they can update their information, right? So it's like you're running a certain program, but like as they relax, they can get new information and they can start operating more in attunement and alignment with what you desire, really.
Yeah. And I agree with you that no one can become whole by disowning parts of themselves. It's a re-owning process and a reintegration process. And as you said, dissolving the tension. Now, the thing that happens when you dissolve the tension is that whatever feeling states you were keeping at bay by holding that tension, the feeling state comes back into your awareness. So if you left your body to not feel totally terrified, when you come back into your body bit by bit, that feeling of terror will still be there. And you will need to gradually digest that feeling. Feelings do need to be digested. Let me say that differently. Experience needs to be digested, just like our food does. We eat food, we break it into smaller pieces, we swallow it, goes down into our stomach, gets broken down to the molecular level, and then our body absorbs the part that has food value, you know, the sugars and starches and calcium and minerals and stuff, and you let go of the rest. Same thing with experience. We need to digest our experience moment to moment to moment. And by digest, I mean break it down into smaller pieces and extract what's important about it. Like if I'm eating an apple out in the yard and a bee lands on the apple and I bite on the bee and the bee stings my mouth, I might learn, don't bite the bee. It scares the bee does what bees do, and then I hurt. Let the bee fly away and then bite the apple. So we need to let these tensions relax and know that whatever we have been holding at bay is going to come back, and that's what the therapeutic holding context is, to help the person digest stuff that they have not ever been able to digest just on their own. When I was in the Diamond Heart School, I noticed a terror in my body. And my teacher said, good, let's just sit with it. And I thought, okay, I can do that for 10 minutes. It turned out to take an entire year.
Yeah.
Weekly, hour-long sessions for a year, in which I would never have been able to stay with that without the presence of my teacher.
That's right.
Helping me come back over and over and over again, because believe me, I did everything possible to get the hell away. And I had never before had anybody who could stay with me in it. And I finally dropped through the bottom of this and reconnected with that aspect of my own essence. And the aspect, of course, was a feeling of safety, a feeling of well-being.
Yeah.
Because I had been sitting in this terror, and that terror was running my life.
Yes.
Every hour of every day, up into my 40s or 50s, whenever I finally did this.
Yeah.
You bring up such a really, I mean, and I literally, this is the irony. I wrote sit with other because I wanted to ask you about that piece, and you just kind of talked about that, and maybe just from your experience as well, something that we share with our clients and listeners is that there's only so much work that you can do on your own. Like you could do great work and you can start a meditation practice and you can do all these incredible things. And to actually, and I love the way that you talked about it, to digest these experiences. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter how much work you've done, at least from my experience and hearing you share that, it doesn't matter how much work you've done and how much time and effort and money and energy you put into it. There's just certain things that your system needs another or needs a group of others to sit and hold you in that container so that you're able to stay with the experience. Because what we find is, especially in like LifeSpring and Landmark, right? They're very head-based
they are
concepts. So it's a very mindset. So there's no healing involved. There's an understanding. There's a learning to manage. There's a learning to understand the timeline of how things got created. But when it comes to healing, the mind can't access it. So just what have you noticed and what can you share for people? Because we see people all the time who have had a meditation practice for 10, 15, 20 years. And then they come into our world where there's now group healing sessions and one-on-one healing sessions. And they're like, how is all this stuff just being released? And we're like, you just can't do this on your own.
Yeah,
exactly. It's been my experience that our bodies want to heal in every moment. Yes. And they're always looking for opportunities to heal. And as soon as we find ourselves in a situation that is energetically and emotionally safe enough, we will start to heal. And the way our bodies heal is often by expression. We cry, we yell, we pound pillows, we move, we sweat, we talk about it. Oh, this happened, this is terrible, I don't like it, run. We bring awareness to it. And bringing awareness is great, but it's not enough by itself. We need to let the body go through its process. Now, there's one other aspect to this. I mean, I've been a psychotherapist for 35 whatever years. And in the last 20 maybe, I've learned more about energy psychology. Mm-hmm. And that in energy psychology, there are a bunch of techniques for actually clearing trauma out of a person's body without going through the whole dramatic emotional digestion process. Right. The one I've learned most deeply and used most is the tapping process, EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. There are others, so I can't say EFT is the best. It's just the one that I know best. But what I've seen is after you take the charge out of whatever terrible incident it was, the body is able to digest it pretty easily. It's not a big dramatic thing. It's like, oh, wow. I didn't really understand that what they told me about that wasn't true at all.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, this was true about me. And the person's self-concept will flip 180 degrees.
Is
So
there
go ahead.
I was going to say, is there a certain, we talk about sometimes, I'm sure you've heard the phrase spiritual bypassing.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like with some of these modalities, I find that it's like, humans want the quick fix, especially in today's culture, right? Like this idea of like working on something, like you said, terror, you're like, okay, I can be with this for 10 minutes. And then that went for a year. I'm sure during that year, you're like, how long do I still have to go and be with this? It's like, right? It's like, someone give me something to get me out of this thing right now. And this is kind of the way that I think most people deal with spiritual evolution or growth or anything like that. Do you find that some of these tools, I know there's like, what was that book called? I think it was like the Emotional Code, or was that with the magnets?
With the magnets, the Emotion Code.
So there's like magnets, EFTs, EMDR, there's all these different things. I guess my curiosity is, does that spiritually bypass what we came here to actually experience fully and release and digest?
I have not found that. I think spiritual bypassing is a way of justifying leaving your body and its held traumas in the body, to the idea being that, well, I'll just leave the body, which is all full of trauma, I don't like that, and we'll go to heaven, unquote.
Right.
We'll go to the spiritual realm. And really, it's just dissociation.
That's it.
The person is not embodying deeply. They're not able to live here, claim the body, and fully embody. They're using spirituality as an excuse for jumping ship.
Yeah. Ken Wilber coined the phrase growing up work and waking up work.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So like mindset being more like the growing up, cleaning up type work, and then more the energetics awareness practices, the waking up work. And even though they're really one, we've started to, understand it through psychotherapy in the last 100 years that there's this other modality. And to your point, it's why we can see very awakened individuals doing highly out of integrous things, because they actually haven't done the growing up work. And so people with Western minded people, right, they have all this specialized terminology, they're understanding their psychology, but they are like devoid of the energetics. So they think this is like kind of woo woo speak or whatever it might be. And I think that is changing now, because here's the truth, right? Everything is energy, everything is vibration, everything is frequency. We've known this for hundreds of years now, and Nikola Tesla. And so there's a beautiful marriage, and I'm actually very excited to hear that, because when I read your book, it reminds, for one, it fascinates me that somebody can go into that much detail. It really, like, I think you're pointing to it. It feels like the book was written through you. I get that impression.
I interviewed a lot of people and collected a lot of data, and drew on a lot of other teachings for that.
Sure. And, it's just like, it's wild the amount of detail in psychology. And I read that and I think to myself, this is such a great map for people. And sometimes when people get maps, they stop playing in the territories. They think they're like, oh, I'm this person. And they get so attached to it. Oh, I'm a lever. I got to solve my lever pattern. And it's like, well, that's amazing that you have these maps and they're going to give you great insights and awareness. And what you guys are touching on here, it's like we are biological entities that are literally programmed for connection. And like Stephen, I've gone through those terror processes too. Like even last year, I sat in that for like 6 months. Same thing. Get me out of here. This is terrible. Like all your trauma of your past is coming up. These really deep, wrenching emotional experiences. And there's an intelligence to our evolution. And we really need each other. And there's something so beautiful about that. Like you can't do this on your own. You need the connection and presence of another person, finding these quality of authentic connection between each other. And that's the magic. It's like, it takes these small little things for us to elicit what you describe as our body constantly wanting to heal. Quantum physics is pointing to the same thing. These like loopings of like really just everything wants to go back to homeostasis. Like everywhere we look in the universe, everything is just coming into homeostasis. Yeah. Your body is the same. We want to create an environment that allows for your body to take advantage of that.
Yeah. And a couple of things, if I can remember them. I always encourage people to not call it the lever pattern, but the leaving pattern.
Right.
Leave it as a verb, because in English, we tend to use nouns a great deal. There are some other languages which are more verb oriented. English is very noun oriented. That creates a mindset in the speaker of turning all of experience in life into things,
right?
Discrete objects. It seems to me that's a mistake. Let's bring them back to being processes and experiences. And I've found that it helps people to talk about it as the leaving pattern or the merging pattern or the enduring pattern. I could have called aggressive pattern the dominating pattern. Pirakos had already called it aggressive, so I decided to stay with that. And rigid pattern is just so perfect a name. I mean, you can't beat that name.
Yep.
In terms of the energy fields, an energy field or an electromagnetic field can be more coherent or less coherent.
Sure.
Right? The difference between an iron magnet and a regular piece of iron is only that in the magnet, the little grains, like cells in the metal structure, are all aligned the same way. So they reinforce each other and they create a coherent magnetic field. Whereas in the lump of iron, they cancel each other out. It's more chaotic. So my point is here, a field that is more coherent will gradually over time cause another field which is incoherent, which is chaotic, to become coherent.
Sure.
And that's what we need for healing. That's why a child, a little kid who is, hurt, angry, scared, jumps into mom or dad's lap. And what they want is mom or dad to put their arms around them and just hold them and just maintain a coherent field. Like, it's okay. We're here. I'm here. I love you. It's going to be fine. And the child's field will gradually shift into more and more coherence, and their nervous system will calm down. Their fear will recede. And when we talk about it in terms of groups or therapy situations, it is the job of the therapist or the group leader to create an energy field which is more coherent, which feels to the client more safe.
Yep.
And then the client can feel how chaotic and upset and dysregulated they actually are, and let that pass through because they feel safe enough to let it pass through. They don't have to keep the brakes on constantly. Like, I can't feel that, I'll be overwhelmed, I'll die.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's my understanding of sort of how the healing process works.
Yeah.
A more coherent field re-regulates a less coherent field.
I love that metaphor. Our teachers would call it like the configuration, like a person's in a configuration.
Oh, okay.
And that awareness is, self-liberating, self-organizing. And so once a healing process happens, you're literally reconfiguring. And it's just like any cells, like a hydrogen cell that attaches itself to two oxygen cells, right, is going to produce a different vibration, a different element. And again, like we have this tendency of thinking of ourselves as separate from nature somehow. Like, I even looked up the definition of human nature, and it literally says like separate from, which is the strangest thing. And so we look at ourselves like we're this element that doesn't operate like the rest of the universe, when in fact we operate identically to the rest of it, right?
Yeah.
And so if you can observe those things out there, it's like you can also observe those in here, and the lessons kind of work both ways. For I've been in really deep states of meditation, and as you go really, really deep into your system and almost visually see what's happening in there, it replicates the universe. Like you can learn all about the stars by looking at within yourself. So yeah, I love that, and I think that's what we find when we bring communities of people together who are intensely doing energy work on a regular basis, bringing themselves into coherence on a daily basis. And I'm sure when we look at the Mayans and ancient cultures, and there's evidence that they were all doing this together in form, like they would come together 3 times a day and sit in coherence, is we find that people come into that field and can accelerate their process of healing. Like they're almost like leveraging that coherence and have much faster healing experiences.
And that sense of separation from nature is, I think, the defining characteristic of Western culture.
Yeah.
It is both what makes us so able to act on the natural world, for better and worse, and it's what makes us feel so fundamentally lonely. That the spiritual starvation of the Western world is a result of feeling separate from the trees and the grass and the earth and the birds and the water and the fishes and the sky and the wind and the immanence of nature.
Yeah. So
coming back to that with conscious awareness, because it's a journey. It's Wilber's pre-egoic, egoic, and transegoic states. That when you get to transegoic, you can manage both the pre-egoic and egoic states, but in a wiser way.
And hopefully we are going to that. I mean, I think as practitioners, we're all. It's interesting, right? There's like so much stuff in the news that is so feels dark, feels very.
Yeah.
I mean, even with the war that happened, it just I don't know. Somehow the Ukraine-Russia war to me just felt like a huge step back in human evolution. I really just in my own witnessing, I was like, oh my God, we're past this, and then here we are again dealing with the same stuff. But I think even given that there's so much as practitioners that we see with the speed of evolution of humans. I mean, you as a practitioner who's been doing this for decades, like I'm sure you're watching people that you work with go through things that maybe took you 10, 15, 20 years, and they're doing it in a year or two. And it's breathtaking to watch the exponential growth that's happening. When you wrote the book, did you have some sort of clear intention of what you wanted to share with humanity, serve humanity with? Was there ever that, or it was just kind of like you were just in it writing and all of a sudden this book arrived?
I knew I wanted to make a contribution. I had known for decades that I wanted to somehow make a contribution to life. And up to that point, the main contribution I'd been able to make was my individual therapy work and the groups that I had led and things like that. The teaching I had done. But, that's relatively small, touches a relatively small number of people. And so I knew I wanted to somehow make a larger contribution to life, but I had not been able to find my niche, my place on the medicine wheel, if that image makes sense to you. And the pulling together of all these different strands of the lineage of this map of personality proved to be the biggest way that I could make a contribution. I'm hoping to do several more books. I've taught 3 online classes now, videotaped all those classes, and the I still say videotape. Look at how old I am.
I was smiling because we all still do that. That's exactly what I was smiling about.
And the video courses are now available for anybody who wants to go get those from the website. But I noticed when I had finally published the book, and it took like 8 years to go through all these steps and endless editing, rewrites, and things like that. When I had finally published it, I felt this relaxation in my body, this feeling of, oh, good. Now I've done something that will live on after me.
Mm.
And to me, that's basically the most you can do in life. You can make some contribution to life in general that will make the experience of the people who come after better.
Love that.
So that seems like a good thing to do.
Yeah. And I'd love to share with you, Stephen, like that, if that was the intention, at least from who we get to invest our time with, like it's made an enormous contribution. I have a very short list of books that when people enter this space that I say are must reads. It's like Michael Singer's Untethered Soul. We have a few meditation teachers that we've learned like some of this energetics through, and it's 5 personality patterns. Like those, you're easily in my top 3, and every single person that reads that book comes back and is always extraordinarily grateful for that experience, for that knowledge, and it's not. And what I love about this book, it's like you can read 5 pages and just sit with that for a week.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a book.
Lots of couples who read it to each other out loud.
Right.
And they'll read a page or 2, and then they'll go, "Oh God," and then they'll talk about that for a week.
That's it, because the dynamics are so rich and they're so deep. And again, it's not about like defining yourself as any particular thing, because in essence, we all have these patterns. We've all been through the human developmental cycle. We all exude them, whether subtle or dominant or whatever it might be. But when you get a map of yourself, it elicits this experience of self-awareness. And even if like, in a moment you would have said something that would have hurt you or somebody else, and that doesn't happen, that's a completely different future. Like, like this is really, really important stuff. So I just want to let you know that, it's doing its job and profound. And we're so grateful for the time and effort that it took to put that together. And I love hearing stories of like the perfection of the intelligence of the field. Like you were doing this and you were doing that. And we all think of time and study as this like linear process. If I know where I'm going, I know how I'm going to do it. But oftentimes the reality in life is like we do these things that seem completely unrelated to one another until it congeals into this one, like this idea that all these different experiences informed it. And it's like, had those different experiences happened, you would have never had those insights. And I think a lot of us get lost in trying to find our path, and it's like, well, no, you're always on it. You just don't know what it's going to turn into.
Yeah. You couldn't be anywhere but on your path.
That's it.
It's not possible.
That's it. So beautiful.
And I've found that. Thanks for your compliments about the book. I know there are like at least 20,000 copies that have been bought, and I assume passed around. So that's a lot of people. But for anybody who learns any map of personality, like the very first thing you learn is, oh, wow, other people are not just like me. I thought they were all just like me, except some of them seem to be kind of dumb.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, they're actually having a different experience of the same situation. And therefore, they interpret it differently, and they feel and think different things about it. And that doesn't make them wrong, and it doesn't make me wrong, but it explains why we have these arguments and how to come out of the argument.
Yeah.
I had an interesting friend, one of our clients brought this up, and then I was meditating this morning, and it kind of like started swirling in my head. So now that there are these maps, have you ever heard or noticed things where it's like a certain partnership, whether in business or intimate, whatever it might be, that certain character styles work better with other character styles in a soul relationship, in a business relationship, things like that? Or is it just kind of like, you know, we end up with who we end up because that's the lessons that we're supposed to get? And, you know, do people ever use this and go like, you know, I have aggressive tendency. Maybe I want to be with a, you know, endurer, or, you know, something like that.
Mm-hmm. It is true that aggressive patterned people and enduring patterned people tend to make a fairly healthy connection, because the enduring patterned, well, the aggressive pattern person wants to be the irresistible force, and the enduring pattern person becomes the immovable object.
Right.
And so they have that shoving match for a while until they both realize this ain't so great. Maybe there's another way. Yeah, this is the perennial question, like, but who should I marry? Like,
that's what I'm saying. Like, do people actually use this stuff and go, wait, I need to look for, you know, like people do it with astrology. It's like, are they like, okay, who are my signs out there?
Who should I be matched with? So first thing is, it's not a typology. You are not a pattern. You are presence. Your job is to recognize what patterns you go into, and when you are in them, and get out of your patterns and back to presence. Be in presence most of the time. So the healthiest and most functional relationships are those in which both people are in presence more of the time. That's what we want to get to. The personality patterns are ways to step back from presence so you don't feel XYZ so intensely, because it's uncomfortable.
Right.
You know, whether it's I'm scared of you or I'm scared of my own inner strength. So first thing is presence. Go for presence and look for other people who tend to be able to be more present more of the time, who have a higher threshold that the distress has to get to before they go into one of their patterns. At the same time, it is true that there are certain combinations of patterns which work better inside a person or between two people, and certain combinations which are more problematic, whether they're inside one person or between two people. I just actually taught a class on this, class called How to Have Better Relationships. First thing is, if you connect with, if you're dating, if you're in a business with any person who one of their patterns is the same as one of your patterns, the two of you will understand each other through that pattern in a deeper, kind of more intuitive way. You will agree on what the world is and how it works and how we communicate and all that. The lines of communication are open. So whether it's rigid and rigid, or leaving pattern and leaving pattern, or merging and merging, you know, it's like you agree on the basics.
Yeah.
That makes things easier.
Sure.
But it also means you have the same blind spots.
Exactly.
So, you know, the two of you can easily screw up because neither of you sees that blind spot. In terms of combinations that help each other out, well, there are reinforcing combinations like merging and rigid patterns are both focused on doing what's expected. For merging pattern, it's doing what the other people expect. For rigid pattern, it's doing what the rules expect. But they're both good at doing and being what's expected. If you get that combination in an individual, they're really good at being who they're supposed to be, and probably having a real hard time finding their core and being themselves. Yep. So they need to practice core and ground and edge. a combination, and that combination happens in romances too. A combination that's more difficult within one person is aggressive pattern and merging pattern, because the aggressive pattern actually has contempt for the merging pattern's like lack of strength and
Right.
tries to crush it. And so you get a level of self-attack that's sometimes pretty brutal. It's been my experience that I haven't seen that combination in one person as frequently as other combinations. And when it's there, it tends to be pretty dramatic, because the switch from one pattern to the other pattern is quite dramatic. And a person who does those two, frequently they have a reputation for kind of burning down their lovers, right? Because they switch from, I need you to love me, why don't you love me, to, you should do what I say or I will crush you. And interestingly enough, the merging and aggressive patterns are quite common in romantic relationships.
Yeah.
More often than not, it's the woman in merging pattern and the man in aggressive, because those are, the most feminine, the most masculine of patterns. And that's kind of socially approved of.
Right.
But I've certainly seen couples where the woman does aggressive pattern and the man does merging pattern.
Surely.
Same energy dynamics as the other way.
Sure.
Yeah.
And, if they can divide up the world and the responsibilities into, okay, you keep the living room beautiful and I will hold off the hordes at the doorway, they can have a comfortable life together.
Yeah.
They can each appreciate the other's energy.
Yeah. It's interesting because the person that asked me was talking about it from a business relationship standpoint. She obviously appreciates the fact that Guy and I work together. And listen, as coaches, we get to work with people both one-on-one and in groups, and different people can monitor different things, and someone can be talking, someone can be holding the group energetically. And for one person to try to do that would be, a lot bigger of an undertaking. But I was thinking after she asked, and I said to myself, interestingly, Guy and I have very, very similar character styles. Slightly different ruptures, like at slightly different times, but we're very similar. And having said that, I think it comes back to what we started this conversation with, which is our blow-ups used to be nasty. Like it used to be like, F you, hang up the phone, blah, 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 blah. But then we had Landmark, right? So it's like 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, it's like, okay, I'm going to take responsibility, right? Like we did all that stuff, but we would have it. We would have it out.
Yeah.
And I feel like now, as we've done more of this work, to your point about safety, right? It's like bring safety into your own system,
right?
Which enhances presence, which enhances. So like when Guy does something to me, for example, I'm able to maintain stability and ground. Whereas before he would come and it would be like an arrow right through the heart. Now it's kind of like there's more safety in my system because of all the work that I've cultivated, so that when he comes at me, even if it is in that same way, which is not really, because he's done a lot of work also, but like my experience of it is so different. It's like that story of Buddha, right, where they sent a bunch of arrows at him and it turned into flowers. I'm not, quite there all the time yet, but it really is that, where it's like, I feel like as you do more of this work energetically, releasing and healing these traumas, there's less things for people to hook into or push or whatever. And to me, we say it all the time, like the greatest moment in personal development and spiritual development is that moment where mom or dad or your lover or someone says something to you that every other time you're like, I'm going to kill them. And they say it and you're just standing there like nothing. And you have this moment where you go, wait, I'm not going to react? Like nothing? Like
The
no
body
reaction.
is physiologically less reactive.
Yeah.
That's right.
That to me is it's more, I love that you said it's presence, right? Because that's what it is. It's in the moment. Are you hijacked and are you acting from the pattern? Or can you actually be here and receive that which is coming your way with this open-hearted acceptance of this person is just having that experience right now?
Yeah. And I would change some of your language. Instead of saying, as you bring more safety into your system, I would say, as you heal or clear out the older traumas, the deep core traumas. My sense is that it is the traumas which continue to feed the fires inside and make us reactive. And the more we're able to clear out our own personal traumas, the more our system organically feels safe.
Yeah.
That the experience of safety is not like something extra that we bring in. It's the natural state when we're not in overwhelm.
I love that.
We're not traumatized.
I love that. It's not more, it's less.
Yeah. And that the basic, you were talking before about the, what was it? Wilber's growing up and
waking up. Yeah.
Waking up. Yeah. The growing up is healing your personality level. And then the waking up is actually the spiritual level of work. But since most of us who get into spiritual work started long before we have healed most of the personality stuff, we then do the spiritual work in a way that doesn't disturb the personality traumas too much. Like, if you are not in your body, if one of your main safety strategies is leaving your body, you'll go join a meditation school that doesn't require you to be in your body.
That's right.
And you'll sit in a monastery in Tibet or Vietnam or someplace for 10 years and not visit your heart or your belly ever.
Yeah. You're going to the fields and awakened awareness. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is part of what I would call spiritual bypass.
Sure.
But we all do this. So it's really important to have a map of personality which shows you, oh, look, I get caught over here and I get caught over here. And so I need to do spiritual practices that help me get uncaught from those. And I need to do healing work to get uncaught from those. And my healing practices are not necessarily the same as those that would be right for a person who gets caught somewhere else.
Beautiful.
A person who, for instance, does leaving patterns strongly really needs to embody. They need to come back into their body, claim the physical body, claim the physical plane. A person who is more in aggressive pattern, they're already in their body. That's not a problem. Feeling core is not a problem. Being constantly terrified is a problem.
Yeah. That was one of my biggest insights. Yeah, I was going to say one of my biggest insights from reading your book. I had never put together the broken heart because Eli and I are very much aggressive pattern. You can see by about body shape and just lineage and all this kind of stuff. I had never thought about it as a broken heart. And I was reading your book the first time while I was traveling in Europe by myself for 2 months. And I was in Nice. I was traveling along the Mediterranean there for a few weeks. And I was in Nice and I was leaving the hotel. And I think you had described it in the book as like you're like a plow. Like you're like plowing like an energy plow like this. And I was walking down the street and two gentlemen were coming at me. And I recognized that I was feeling afraid because I was down in this city that I don't know by myself with language I don't speak. And two guys were walking towards me and I puffed up. I puffed up my body, but I also puffed up my energy. Yep. And I watched them move in opposite directions and then cross the street.
Yes.
And I remember in the back of my mind, I hear this little voice go, "Good." Because it was like it scared them, like my inner, like
Right.
I had this experience of scaring people and then
Yes.
feeling more safe in my body, and I was like, what good, like I had to like turn and look behind me, and I remember thinking, like, I actually felt this terror and heartache that was underneath me, and it was so obvious in that moment, and I was like a huge shift for me in my awareness around my pattern.
Good.
Yeah, it's really
Good.
beautiful.
Yeah. Aggressive pattern is my secondary pattern. And I've been noticing as we do this interview that we sort of ping off each other, the three of us. And we, it's like the energy in the space keeps building and building and building. I expect some people who are more sensitive to energy and not so okay with running bigger energy through their body, maybe sort of backing away from us, going like, Jesus, guys, turn it down.
Yeah, they're intense. Yeah.
So I'm paying a little more attention to trying to ground the space more deeply.
Same here and there. Yeah, I know when we work with Libra pattern, or people in the leaving pattern,
Thank you.
we'd have to really, thank you, have to really back it up, like really back away, and just,
absolutely.
You can come at them very hot, and then they shock and they disassociate. Yeah.
Energy manners
really matters.
One of the hard things for people who do aggressive pattern to learn is we typically operate on a higher voltage. Like if most people are operating at 110, we're at 220 or sometimes 440, because why not?
Actually.
And that you can't do that to other people. It shocks them.
Yeah.
And it scares them and they don't like it. And if you want them to like you, you have to practice energy manners.
Yeah. That's really important. I really love that. And it's, up until reading your book and starting to work with the energetics, we had no awareness around that whatsoever. Like that wasn't a
it's
thing.
It's not taught in the Western world.
Yeah. And it was either, you like it, you like me, you don't like me. Like I'm going to be who I be. Also having kids, I think really helped with that, because my son, is much more open to that. My daughter, a lot less. Like she gets, so it's learning.
You hit a 1-year-old with a big jolt of energy, they burst into tears.
Totally.
Yep.
And as an adult, you think, that was my fault. That's like, wait a minute, I cannot blame this on the 1-year-old.
Yeah.
It's not time for them to just buck up and get over it.
That starts at 3. No, I'm just kidding.
I've tried with my 3-year-old. It doesn't start at 3 either.
It started at 3 either. Stephen, I know we've gone over, so I just want to really be mindful of your time. And I just truly, from the bottom of our hearts and all those that will listen to this, just a huge amount of gratitude for the work that you have brought through to this planet. And if anyone listening to this has not read this book yet, and you are interested in any way, shape, or form about personal development, like I said, there are probably 1, 2, 3 books that we recommend to everyone. This is absolutely a must read. And remember, like, it's a big book with a lot of information. You don't need to read it cover to cover. Like, find the pattern, in the introductory paragraph that resonates for you, and then just go read that. Like, just start with that. Read a few pages at a time. It will give you a sense of heightened awareness about the way that you operate in the world, the way that you operate with others in the world, why certain things have constantly happened. Like, it is just, it's a peek behind the curtains of how you operate in the world. And Stephen, you mentioned a few courses and things like that. Where should people go to find out more about you, about your courses, if they want to buy the book?
The book website, cleverly titled the5personalitypatterns.com. You can either spell out 5 or use the number. It'll refer you to the site. So all that stuff is there. And hold on a second. There was something else.
about programs, coaching, like
No. It was something else from what you were just saying. Oh, compassion. One of my favorite things about this way of understanding yourself and understanding other people is that you naturally begin to feel compassion for yourself and for the other people. It's like, oh, they're not doing that to be mean.
That's right.
They're not doing that to hurt me. They think that's the best way to feel safer themselves.
Yeah,
exactly.
And it's a mistaken belief, but it's just a mistaken belief. You know, there is a better way. So what we need to do is notice the mistaken belief and then contradict that. But compassion for yourself is the doorway, you know, to healing. It took me, as a person who does rigid pattern primary and then aggressive, it took me a while to realize that more knowledge was not the key to healing, but an energy field of love is the key to healing.
Well said. Wow.
It takes place when we feel safe and loved. So more compassion for yourself is a good thing.
Yeah.
And for those weird people you can't understand.
That's right.
Dumb, slow ones.
And I want to thank both of you too for all that you're doing to help people develop, to spread this particular teaching about this way of understanding people.
Sure.
And the other good stuff that you've learned, you know. My book is one piece of a much larger puzzle. So hooray for all of it.
Yeah, thank you for that. Received and appreciated. So many good gems here. Yeah, thank you so much for your time, Stephen. Such a pleasure.
My pleasure. I love talking about this stuff. I'm really glad that you guys have studied it so deeply. And I can tell you've read this book more than once because you have a real grasp.
Absolutely.
Of the material.
It's funny. We're in a 2-year-long program, and they go through like the character styles.
Oh,
right?
Is that Luminous Awareness?
Yeah, Luminous.
Yeah.
And so the practice that a lot of people take on is every single module, you're basically reading up on that character style. So it's like you're reading and reading and reading. And it's interesting because in the energy of it, right? Like we're all kind of going through the energetics of that character style. So even if it's not your character style, you're starting to experience all of these things. Like we just did the leaving pattern, right? Yeah. And, you know, 2 weeks before, 3 weeks before the module, everyone's just like space cadets and just like, what is happening? And then someone's like, we're in the air module. And you're like, oh yeah, that's right. You know, it just, you need those reminders because it's just not something that happens. And all of a sudden you're like, nothing's working.
Yeah. Like, wow, I've lost track of my body.
That's it.
Exactly.
And to have a felt sense experience of how other people get caught is tremendously helpful.
Amazing.
That you immediately understand it at a kind of intuitive, physical, emotional level and stop judging them so much and go, Jesus, guys, this is hard.
Yeah. And you're right. It's the compassion piece, right? Like when you're watching people so stuck in a pattern, I mean, we all have our pattern, but you know, you're watching someone so stuck in a pattern that's not familiar to you.
Yeah.
But you can see the stuckness. You're like, it's hijacked. There's no control. There's just boom. And so it just brings up so much compassion. And all you want as someone that loves this other person is you just want to give them the space to just feel connected and loved and held so that they can be in that place and not made wrong or not made to feel weird or whatever. Just like you get to be that. And I'm still going to be here while you're being that, loving you.
Right.
And it's huge. It's just such an amazing gift that we all get to give to each other. So yeah, for anyone who has not read this book, the biggest recommendation, biggest seal of approval that we could give, please go grab it, connect with Stephen Kessler. If you want to dive into his courses, things like that, I'm sure those are incredible as well. And yeah, Stephen, just thank you for taking the time to be here with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, brother.
Take care, guys.
Amazing.
Yeah, likewise.
Bye for now, everyone. Thank you, dear one, for choosing to share a bit of your day with us. We value you greatly. And as a way to give back and help you to deepen these practices, we want to invite you to join our incredible community on Facebook. You can do so easily by going to joinoldsouls.com and ask for an invite. This is our private community where old souls and seekers are able to grow and share their journey with others. We hold exclusive weekly live streams, we answer your personal questions, and offer valuable insights that we won't be able to share here on the podcast. So again, just head to joinoldsouls.com and grab your invite today. And as always, if you enjoy this podcast, please head to iTunes and leave us a review. It's the only way other people can find this show. So if it's making a difference in your life, please share the love. Until we meet again, have an amazing week, dear one.